The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Technology. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. And joining me today on the panel are Father Cory Sticha. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going, Dom?
Wonderful. And Joanne Mercier. Hi, Joanne.
Hello, everyone.
And happy spring is what I want to say, even though this is a podcast, you might be listening to this whenever, but
it sure feels like it here, finally.
It's 52 degrees outside, and I'm happy. So
yeah, there's still snow outside my window, so no, not yet.
We're only 40. Only. After as cold as it's been, it feels really good outside.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, we're not here to talk about weather. We're here to talk about the tech news. But one of the things that makes me think of spring is the Apple Spring event, and we just a little bit of news. It's not really our main topic today, but I just want to throw out there that Apple has announced its March 25th Showtime event. So we talked about that recently, about Apple's upcoming services in news and in streaming media and that sort of stuff. And we can expect to see lots of announcements concerning that. So obviously we'll talk about that once they make those announcements. So March 25th on a Monday, which is unusual for Apple. Speculation is that Oprah Winfrey's day off from her show is on Mondays. So, she was one of the few stars that Apple has mentioned in connection with their streaming services. So it's expected that she'll be present at the event. So take that for what it will. So let's move on to our main topic today, though, which is we wanted to talk about this idea of making technology accessible for lots of people. And accessibility often gets pigeonholed into people who have certain kinds of disabilities, which is important. We have to make sure that technology is accessible for folks who have like vision issues or hand-eye coordination issues or stuff like that. But I think we wanted to talk about a little broader of an issue of accessible for people outside the usual tech-obsessed demographic. And so I want to start sort of at the 50,000 foot level, and then we'll get down to some practical suggestions in the second part of the show. But to start with, I wanted to, kind of talk about, where do we stand with making technology accessible to everyone in let's just say in our country. I can't really speak to Europe or other countries, but say even our country, there are some issues that arise. So for one thing, a lot of this stuff is expensive. Every year the new phones are more and more expensive, the tablets, the computers, and then all these services and then watches and other gadgets. And I think a lot of people are wondering is, can we afford it? So what do you think? Is consumer tech getting too expensive, or is there something for everyone throughout the price range? What do you think? Who wants to go first? I didn't check with you guys first. Joanne?
Well, Joanne, why don't you go first, since you kind of brought up this as a topic?
Yeah, that's because of my rant a couple of weeks ago about the phones getting too expensive.
Yeah.
I think it depends on what you're looking for and then the quality of it. So I did a little bit of research this week on especially senior friendly technology. And I can see that they have some things that are relatively expensive or with payment plans for those who are older. But to me, the technophile, they don't always do the job. And then you have Apple, which I think, I'm probably stating the obvious here, but Apple has done a lot of good things with accessibility with their products. But they're awfully expensive, except for the iPad Nothing. That's,
right.
$329, and that's pretty, they tout it as an educational model, but I think seniors fall into that category too, as being able to, be able to afford something like that. So I think there has to be a fine line walked with these companies. Yes, they need to make money. I get that. But I think they also need to have a little bit more of an awareness, but I think Apple already does, that there are other people out there who could really benefit from this and can make their lives a lot easier with the products. And I think that will still bring other people who don't have that issue to them, you know, as customers.
Father Cory, did you have anything you wanted to add or to say on that?
Well, and I think the thing we need to be careful as technophiles is those of us who we enjoy the technology, we want to use the technology, we want the latest and greatest, the bleeding edge, et cetera, et cetera. We need to be careful that we don't assume that everybody wants / needs the bleeding edge, you know,
right.
Because there are phones, there are devices that are what we would consider low cost, you know, let's say less than $300, you know, that we would all the three of us would look at and go, this is insufficient. And yet I look at my parents and I gave them the first gen iPad, which came out 10 years ago. They're still using it. It still works for them. It still does what they need as far as a tablet is concerned. Now they've also moved on. I think my folks also both have like iPhone 8s that they bought a year or so ago, you know, so it wasn't the top of the line, but it was close. And that also works for them as well.
I have something similar. My kids, I have 5 kids, and we have like 4 or 5 iPads of various vintages. I don't think any ones, but we have like a couple of iPad 2s and a couple throughout, you know, from over time that are hand-me-downs. Some have cracked screens and whatever, and they're fine for the kids. The things they do, and they're fine. One of the things I want to is kind of talk about is the flip side of that argument, where you say, you know, most people don't need the bleeding edge. Is there's another half. I mean, you're right. I agree with that. Most people don't need a $1,200 smartphone, whether they think they need it or not. They don't. Most people don't. Heck, even I barely, quote unquote, need it. You know what I mean? But there's the other end of the spectrum, which is there's a danger of relegating old tech or hard to use tech, which is cheap, to people. So there are a lot of like Amazon Fire tablets out there, which are like, they come like a 6-pack for $50 plus you get a bottle of shampoo with it. You know, I mean, they're really cheap, but they don't work very well. Or very cheap Windows laptops, which are really cheap, but are hard to maintain, are full of shovelware and all that stuff that they load on them. And so people get this stuff and then they try to use it and they think, I don't understand tech. I don't like tech. It doesn't work for me. And there's sort of this digital divide, so that people, you know, either they're trying to spend more than they got in order to get, you know, the best, or they're trying to save some money and they get something that doesn't work for them. And I think both of those are a part of the the issue we have to be careful of.
Well, I think right now the digital divide is probably huge, like the Grand Canyon, but I think it's going to start getting smaller and smaller as we get older and kind of know what we're looking for elder, elder technology. And I think there are some people, I don't want to go ahead and tell you my pick of the week already because it's the perfect thing that I think is going to sort of bridge the gap. But I think people are starting to come to that awareness, not just for the elderly, but for those with other physical handicaps or, you know, mental abilities that need something not like an iPad that does everything or is throwaway as a Fire tablet.
Well, and I was just thinking, like you're mentioning, like low cost Windows laptop. That's what I've got sitting here. This is an HP that was like a $200 Walmart special, and that was even on clearance, $200. Yeah. And as a Windows laptop, it was awful, unusable. You know, to the point of just painful. You know, forget trying to play games. You know, that's not going to happen. Even just using like Publisher on it was almost impossible. Well, now it's a Chromebook and it's perfect. It is exactly, you know, and that's the kind of technology that I think a lot of people maybe were talking about. They don't need a smartphone. They don't need a tablet. Just a laptop like a Chromebook that can sit there. And I know, Dom, you've got one of your children has a Chromebook. Yeah. It can check email. It can do web stuff. It can do everything they need, and they're cheap, and they're good quality usually.
I was surprised at how much I liked it's an Asus Chromebook that I got for my daughter. She's 12. She turns 13 in a few months. And for Google, if they're under 13, there are special restrictions, which are like handcuffs. That makes it so hard to do things. Once she turns 13, I'm pretty sure that's going to open up. And my pick of the week a few weeks ago was Google's Family Link, which is a parental control software for their products. And so that helps a bit. But you're right. I mean, a Google Chromebook is a good laptop for a lot of people. And it's got a keyboard, so it's not a tablet. And for people who aren't used to typing on screen, my kids, when they see a keyboard, they actually have to stop and think about it because they only ever type on screen. So but for people who need a keyboard still, it's got that, and it's got the full suite of Google stuff and the web and all that sort of stuff. So I agree. I want to kind of shift it to another question, which you brought up, Father Cory, because of your situation. So you live out in Montana, somewhat remotely, and a lot of times the tech press kind of concentrates on all the big cities on the periphery and the sort of tech they get access to. But you have a special understanding of the difficulty of getting access to the internet and streaming services where it's kind of remote, where it's hard to get. The vast open spaces of the middle of America.
And it's one thing that's improved dramatically, even just in the 8 years I've been here in Malta, and in the 10 years I've been a priest. Yeah, you get into the bigger cities within Montana, Great Falls, Billings, and so on. There are options. You've got cable, you've got the standard copper DSL, you've got fiber, you've got all these different options. But a lot of these small towns, and especially for like our farmers and ranchers who are out in the boonies, it's even harder. Now, as I said, it's improved here in Malta and in many other communities in our little co-op, our little phone co-op. We have fiber. I have fiber right to my house. Now we don't have Google fiber. We don't have 1 gigabit to the house. Like I think I'm at 25 megabit is what my download speed is, which is still for most uses pretty sufficient. I could be sitting watching Hulu on one screen and something else, YouTube on another screen, and it streams just fine, high definition. For what I need, it's fine. But if you're talking about the people that have 100 megabit, if not gigabit, we're not there yet. Now the people who are out in the way boonies, way out in the middle of go to the middle of nowhere and keep driving, they might have the satellite options. Which they work, but they're not good. They're slow, they're laggy, they're by necessity. You've got that travel time between the satellite and the dish and back and forth and things like that. So many of the really remote areas, there isn't really good internet access still to this day.
Even in Massachusetts, which is, we're still fairly, densely populated here. But in central Massachusetts, we have a lot of hills, the Berkshires, and a lot of the small towns. Most of the population is concentrated near the Boston, so most of the state is fairly empty. And you have these towns in the hills that they're struggling a bit because they want to attract people to live there, but they were sort of are looking at small tech companies, small people who companies that can work via the internet. And so they need good internet access, and they're struggling to get it into these small towns. And they're doing things like towns are setting up their own internet companies to pipe it in and that sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, this is an issue that affects a lot of places that aren't big cities, which is most of America.
I'd love to have Google swoop in and put in gigabit, but that ain't gonna happen anytime soon.
Right. Joanne?
Yeah, but I think a lot of the problems in the cities and the closely populated areas is the lack of competition between companies, because in some places it's one and done and you have to take what they give you, or if you're lucky you get two, so they can play off each other. So I think everybody somewhere there's an answer to this internet conundrum, because how are other countries getting it faster and cheaper than we are? We're paying a lot for what we get.
And one thing I think is helping is 4G internet going into 5G cell coverage, because I'm sitting here and I've got, again, fiber to the house, and I've got a 4G tower that's a half a mile away. So I've got decent access here in town. And I think as 5G rolls out and you look at what 5G is going to be capable of, that's only going to help rural areas, although it does require more towers because it doesn't spread as far.
Right. I was going to say 5G's problem is it's shorter range, and it requires more coverage. I mean, ironically, you probably have better LTE service where you are than I do in my home in a Boston suburb. I have I barely get. I have 2 bars right now on my iPhone, so I do AT&T's calling over Wi-Fi because I have good Wi-Fi here. Like I have I forget whether I'm 75 or 100 megabit right now. And I need a little more because I'm uploading podcasts and all that sort of stuff all the time. So I get a little more, but yeah, I mean, the funny thing is how these issues aren't necessarily just rural versus urban and suburban, but I think it's more prevalent in rural. Like rural really shows how far we have to go. I mean, America's a big country geographically. There's a lot of space that needs to get covered.
And people assume, they think of being in a city where, you can just set up a Pandora stream or something like that and just let it play. Yeah, that doesn't work. Once they get out of town, forget it.
Right. I was listening to another podcast, I think Mac Power Users, a few years ago, and they had a guy on. He's a pastor at a small church that's semi-remote in Ohio, who his internet access at home is really slow. I figured it was. And he talks about having to learn how to, I mean, he's a techie, so he programmed scripts to batch do a lot of things so that he connects, does everything he needs to do, and then disconnects. And I'm like, wow, I was doing that back in the 80s when I was on CompuServe. And
those old dial-up,
Yeah, right. And it's essentially, so, I mean, we have a ways to go. Like people in Europe are they have a lot better coverage, but Europe is a lot smaller. The European countries are a lot smaller than vast expanses of America, so the issues are a little different.
And there is the investment by their governments. I think that's the thing we miss is a lot of and these companies are multinational. So you can have a company that's based out of France competing with a company based out of Germany, competing with a company based out of England, and so on. Right. We don't have that here.
We don't have as much of that competition. So I want to shift gears a little bit and come down from our 50,000 foot level down to the ground level and kind of talk about some things related to accessibility. And specifically, I want to talk about helping. I want to pose a theoretical of you've got aging parents. I think all of us have parents who are in the older demographic, the greatest generation, that sort of thing, who we probably have to help with technology. And I want to kind of give the listeners some ideas, some examples that we can provide for ways that we can help our parents. And this can go for people who are not our parents, but people who are not up on technology with staying connected with us, with health things. So I wanted to kind of just throw it out there, and I'll give a for instance, the first example on my list is, and you've heard about it often, is digital photo frames. And, my parents, they're used to getting photos, putting them in a frame, putting them on the dresser, hanging them on the fridge, putting them on the walls. And a generation, a generation younger than us, they don't print anything ever. I actually got a photo print of a picture in the mail the other day, and my kids were all fascinated by this photograph that I was holding of our family, and because it was so unusual. And so a digital photo frame sort of bridges that divide where you can set it up in their home with an internet access, and you can either connect it to, say, your Facebook account. You could set up, for example, like a special album in Google Photos or iPhoto that a lot of these photo frames can just pull from to load, and she can get a constant stream of photos of her grandkids or of the family that she can keep up with. And I say she because I'm thinking of my mom, but it could be parents or a favorite uncle or that sort of thing. So. Do you guys have any suggestions along those lines that you'd like to throw out?
Oh, mine would be the Apple Watch, especially the latest version, because of the fall detection.
The Apple Watch
think
4,
that is so important. And I don't think that's just important for older people. Anybody can take a fall and hit their head and not be conscious enough. And if the watch is going to signal somebody to help you out, I think that's a game changer between, permanent damage and temporary damage.
Right.
So I would suggest that one. I haven't got that version yet. I will be getting it probably for my next birthday. Who knows?
I actually had a conversation with my brothers and sisters about getting one for my mom because she still drives. She's mobile, but her knees are bad, and I'm always afraid of her falling someplace and not being able to get up. And with the Apple Watch, the fall detection, she could call on her phone if she's got her phone near her. But with fall detection on the Apple Watch, the Apple Watch 4 specifically, is supposed to be pretty good. It picks up it only does it for people over a certain age. So, if you're 40 and you I don't know, play a sport and that makes you're skiing, it's not constantly going off. So if you're over a certain age, it automatically engages so that if it detects a fall, not just laying down to go to sleep, but a fall, it will alert, ask you to respond. And if you don't respond within a certain time, it will contact emergency services and a designated contact. And because it's an Apple Watch 4, it'll lead them there.
Dom, is there some way to go past that, bypass that? Because you gave the perfect example of being skiing, and I would want the fall detection on because you can get in pretty hairy situations in skiing. I know my husband does, and he skis sometimes alone. I would feel better if he had something like that available because he won't take his phone on the slopes.
You can. So it's automatically turned off if you're below a certain age, but there is an option to turn it on. But you have to explicitly go into the app. I forget which app. I don't have an Apple Watch 4, so I can't tell. But you have to go into the app and specifically turn it on. So that's a good function. Father Cory, do you have anything you wanted to?
Well, and I would extend that not just with the Apple Watch 4, but like with Fitbits and things like that. Any kind of smart watch that can do the health detection in general, like again, playing with my, my Fitbit where it can, tell you how you're sleeping. Well, that can help for older people where they could be developing sleep issues and not realize it. Your blood pressure or something like that. That those are usually more dedicated devices. But even just your heart rate, because the Fitbit can tell you what your heart rate is. And if it's suddenly going erratic, it'll show up.
Right.
Things like that.
If you get permission, and I'd say this, get permission from your parents if you're going to be monitoring their health data. Don't just do it saying, well, it's for their own good. No, talk to them about it. Get their permission. And then you can possibly monitor some of this and say, hey, Mom, I noticed your blood pressure's been up lately. Or or if they have like a scale, like I have a Withings scale, I noticed your weight's been dropping. Are you getting enough to eat? Are you feeling okay? They have glucose monitors now. They have, like you mentioned, the blood pressure cuffs. They have EKG ones, which I think they have the Apple Watch can do an ECG. But they also have dedicated ones. But I think you have to go through your doctor to get that. But those are that's a good example. That's a good one, Father Cory. I like that one. I'll throw one out there. I like the idea of we mentioned this before of getting them used to using Uber or Lyft or one of those car services to get around. If you're not able to drive them places, maybe they're at a point where they're not quite comfortable. Or you're not comfortable with them driving still. They need to get doctor's appointments. Cabs cabs can be okay, especially if you live in the right kind of place. But if you're in places where the Uber and Lyft are available, they're getting them comfortable with using those sorts of services can be useful as well. They're a little expensive, but it can get them around.
Well, and for a lot of people, those that kind of thing, if you could show that Uber trip was to go to the hospital or go to a medical appointment, that is considered, I believe, contact your tax advisor, tax deductible as transportation for medical purposes.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. And because it's in the app, Uber or Lyft, you'll have the receipts right there in the app. That's a good point. Excellent. Don't take tax advice from us, though, folks. Talk to your tax professional.
I'm not paid the big bucks to be a tax advisor. I'm only a priest, so keep that in mind.
Exactly. Joanne, did you have another bit of a tip or advice?
Well, of course, I'll go with the Echoes, definitely, especially with their drop-in feature. Before my cousin went into the nursing home, I had thought about putting an Echo in her house so that I could, just drop in and say, "How you doing?" I do realize now that would have probably scared her half to death, but but being able to have that kind of a drop-in system or a monitoring, or they can ask for certain things, or do to-do lists, or there's a whole bunch of things you can do with Echoes. And I think, I hate to say it, they got there before the HomePods.
And well, they're still better than the HomePod.
Then in a lot of ways, the HomePods sound better, but the Echoes just do more. So they would be more.
And the Home, the Google Home as well.
Yeah. And, and of course now Facebook is getting into this, which, arguments about Facebook or not, but they do have the devices where it makes the easy, face-to-face calling.
Yeah.
And Google does as well. And so does, Amazon. They're all getting into that market now where they've got the devices with the screens. You can say, call this person and you'll see them. And
yeah. Speaking of the Echo, one of the things I started doing, my son has to take a medication every morning at the same time, and we're always forgetting. And I realized what I did was I set up a reminder on Echo so that at 9 a.m. every day it pops up and says, "Ding! Benedict needs to take his medication," and then it will bing until we say, "Echo, stop," and then he goes and takes it, and he knows how to do it, and he has to take it twice. It's a puffer. And so he has to puff, wait a minute, and puff again. And now he knows how to say, Echo, set a 1-minute timer. And that's the sort of thing where, like, if you set up reminders, like if your parents, if they're still living independently, and they need help remembering to take their medication, setting up an Echo and its reminders for them is a helpful thing. So that's a good one. The other thing I like to do is, especially related to what we're doing here, is podcasts. I like to tell people, you can play any podcast that you know the title of just simply by saying Echo, and I'm obviously purposely using the wrong name, Echo, play Secrets of Technology podcast. And if you put the word podcast at the end of the title, it will play the latest episode of that. And so you could teach your parents, to how to do that, or you could set up the daily briefing on the Echo, which is another way to do it.
But here's one thing that annoys me, though, with that is that the fact that if you set up like a daily briefing, everybody's sound level is different. I don't know if you've noticed that. So all of a sudden it'll be blasting. Yeah, it'll be blasting out of my Echo, and then the next one will be so soft I can't hear it. So it's like, please, can we have something that will level all that out?
Yeah, NPR's Marketplace is this loud, and then Planet Money is that loud. It's like, hey, everybody get on the same page. Father Cory, did you have another one you wanted to mention?
No, I mean and of course again it's going back to the different devices. We're talking about the Chromebooks and the tablets and simple tablets and things like that, just to give them access to the information, because again, we all know this, that so much of what we do is online, our banking, our, if some places, if you want to schedule a medical appointment, you have to go through their website. You can't call someone anymore, things like that.
Right. My last bit of advice is on some smart home stuff. Now, I'd be careful about setting up smart lights and things, because my mom forgets and she flips the switch and that sort of thing. But one of the things that it would be good is both smart locks and smart thermostats. And the smart lock one is good because, like, again, if your parents are still living independently, but you want to make sure they're okay, you can set it to a lot of these locks, lock at a particular time every night, or you can remotely, again, if you told them that you're doing this and they have permission, they're giving you permission, you can remotely lock the door for them. You can go on your phone and you go, oh, their door's still unlocked. They shouldn't be unlocked this late at night. And although you got to be careful, because maybe Dad went out to take the trash to the garbage
exactly.
can.
And you don't know about that.
Right.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful with that sort of thing. That and the thermostats is to make sure that their house is warm enough and they're or cool enough in the summer and that sort of thing. Those smart home technologies can help your parents, especially if you're not nearby. And so that's one thing I want to recommend.
And it also helps us, because I hate to say it, as I am getting older and I'm trying to do two things at once. It's nice for me to be able to say, a lady, do this for me. And lights go on and locks get locked. And, I love it. My husband thinks I'm getting lazy, but you know what? As we get older, I think this is going to be a very good thing for us.
As a younger guy, even I want that. I want to be able to drive out to my house and not have to hit the button for the garage door because it's picked up that I'm within range, and it opens up the garage door and unlocks the door because my phone is close by, and stuff like that. But that's stuff you can set up with your parents too. Again, where as they pull into their driveway, all of a sudden the garage door pops open, so they can pull in. Exactly.
And my pick of the week has something to do with what we just discussed about smart home stuff. And it's connected to this, and I'll talk more about that as we get to them. But I think we've given folks some good ideas for ways to use technology. And if people have ideas that they want to share widely, if they want to send it in feedback, and I'll give all the feedback information at the end of the podcast. We'd love to get some more of those ideas and to get them out there to folks. Share it with the rest of the audience. So if you've got any technology related ideas for helping your parents, or people who need help, family members who need additional help, we'd love to hear them. So let's move on to our picks of the week then. And Joanne, I think you're first this week. You mentioned there's something that works for one of this topic.
Oh, yes. And the name is very interesting. It's called the Grand Pad. And it's a very simple tablet for seniors. Now, I've heard about this for maybe the last 5 years. Somebody wanted to design something like an iPad for their grandparents because the iPad was too difficult for them. So this small pad, which is about the size of an iPad mini, or what would have been a Nexus 7, will pick up calling, email, weather, music, games, photo, a camera, and then basic help. So there's no internet access per se for them to go out and, spend money in the wrong places or get scammed by somebody. For the family, there is an app that they put on their phones so that they can interact with this pad. So it sounds like it's for those seniors who have very little technology savvy, and this is all they need. They want to talk to their kids. They want to email their grandkids. They want pictures. They want to know what's the weather outside. Maybe they've got some music they like. If they can take a picture of things and send it, that's great. So I recommend it. Right now, it's going through Consumer Cellular has, I think, now bought into it at some level, so you can get it through them. And that company is for seniors. They don't only deal in this, they deal in, they're also a cellular company for regular cell phones for seniors and stuff. But that's what I mean by, when I was talking about there's some that aren't so great. They've got this phone called the Jitterbug and for seniors, and I just kind of looked at it and went, yeah, that's not going to work. But I think this will. This looks like it's really good for those seniors who aren't savvy. The ones who are, they should definitely have an iPad. And if the one they can afford is probably going to be the 329, 9.7 version, which I think is pretty reasonable and does quite a lot of things now.
This one looks like it's $40 a month, and it has LTE built in so that you don't have to have a separate data plan, and they don't need internet access in their house to do this. So, I mean, $40 a month is less off in some ways than you'd pay to get a wireless internet in their house and an iPad. I mean, so this sounds pretty interesting, and it's got a stylus and a docking station. So all you got to do is drop it on the docking station to keep it charged. It's an interesting product.
And it comes with free streaming music. I don't know what kind, but it comes with the free streaming music, and you can buy it straight out. So I think if you buy it straight out, it's a little cheaper per month. But if you don't, the cost of the tablet is included in that price.
Awesome. So grandpad.net. We'll put a link in the show notes for all of these. Thanks, Joanne. That's a good one. Father Cory, your pick of the week.
Now, I'm doing something that's not related to our discussion, but it's something that both Dom and I use on a almost daily basis, it feels like.
For me, it's
daily. For him, it's daily. For me, it's a couple times a week, but it's Adobe Audition. This is the software that both of us use for editing our podcast. When I do Let's Talk, when he does everything else, we use it. But the reason why I picked it is last night I was having some fun with it. every Thursday we do trivia at the local brewery. So this evening, we're recording this on Thursday. So this evening we're going to do trivia. And I'm doing music that has been, we do a music round where I play a song, you have to name the title, artist, and year. Well, this time I'm doing songs that have been covered. So it's a song that's been done by more than one band. And so I'm using Audition, or I used Audition to edit them together. So it starts out the first version of the song, and then it switches to that spot on the other version of the song.
Nice. That's
so
cool.
Audition made it so easy to do. With their multi-track was easy to get things lined up and cut and put in place, and to make the songs so that they're the same volume, because of course 2 different versions by 2 different bands are going to have 2 different volumes, but Audition was able to, normalize it so they're about the same volume. So I'm not going to have to be back there cranking up and turning down the volume all the time. And every song is about the same volume and everything. And we've just, I can't speak for Dom, but I know for myself, we have just scratched the surface of what this software can do.
Yes.
I mean, for what we do to edit this podcast is so simple, but ironically, as complicated as it can be, it is simpler than something like Audacity for basic processes. Audacity is great because it's free, but it is a very difficult software if you're doing more than just basic editing. If you're trying to do multi-track on Audacity, it's very difficult, things like that. So Adobe Audition, if you're doing any kind of audio editing, check it out. If you're interested in doing any kind of audio editing, check it out. It is worth the money. It's a little pricey, but it's worth the money.
Yeah, I was using Adobe Audition before it got too pricey. So I agree with you. Ringing endorsement of this product. It is a great piece of software, but it is a little too expensive for me now. So,
although if you can also, it's got a subscription model now, so you can also get it for a monthly price. I think there's I forget we have a special nonprofit bundle price, but I think there's something like $10 a month. You can get Audition. I know there's a Photoshop thing where you can get Photoshop and Lightroom for $10 a month. Or you can get the whole package of all the
and of course,
Adobe Creative Suite. But
the more Adobe software you add on to it, the more that price goes up, but the less it becomes for each software package.
And there are student packages and all that sort of stuff. The learning curve is a little steep, but there are some great YouTube channels that for learning. That's how I learned a lot. I recommend Mike Russell. He specializes in like voiceover work, which really works well for podcaster sort of stuff. And plus they have built-in help, which is really good too. So great pick. That's a good pick. So my pick is the Hue motion sensor. So now I've had Philips Hue lights for a few years now. I finally got my wife to go along with it. She's actually gotten used to it now. We have the Hue lights. We have the Hue switches instead of the old style switch. We make everybody hit the button. If I was starting off fresh, I would probably go with the Lutron Cassetta, which replaces the wall switch, and so you can't even tell it's a smart home thing. But I'm fine with it. But with the big thing that I was always like, why would I get a motion sensor? That just seems like really lazy. Why can't I can just tell the Echo or I can hit the button? Well, it turns out it's really useful. So I have 2 of them now. I have one in my we have a small house, so we have a room that functions as the pantry and the laundry room and semi-storage. And then I have my office. I have one in here in my office. And I have them set so that during the day, when there's enough light, the lights don't come on overhead when it senses motion. But as soon as the light level drops below a certain amount, the lights will come on. At a certain time at night, it will come on lower. So you're losing less electricity, but also because you don't need as much light, in the middle of the night when you're just passing through. Or you could tell it to go up to a full power. And then it turns off automatically. As a dad, I love the idea that we're turning off the lights automatically and they don't stay on all night. And so I've really kind of enjoying having this. And I was thinking like this for with my parents, if we'd had smart lights and it's the nice thing about it is it's magnetic. So I just slap it onto the light switch, because there's a metal under there. I just slap it on there, and that it in both places. Well, actually, in one place it's conveniently located on the light switch, to scan for motion. The other place I have it kind of stuck to a metal, file rack on my bookcase behind me, so that it senses me moving around sitting at this desk. But in either case, the idea is that if my parents were to say get up in the middle of the night and walk around, the lights could come on low, so it's not too bright because nobody wants a bright light in the middle of the night. But that they could see as they walk through, and it's just something I want to recommend. If you have Philips Hue lights, it's a handy addition to the package that you might be able to have a use case for it. So
you're going to have to tell me how you convinced your wife, because I'd like to convince my husband to get some of these.
Well, the short answer is I put a couple in. I started with my office. This is my office, so I put them in. And then I put another one in another room, and then I put a few more in another room, and eventually she got used to it in those places, okay. And I just started replacing all the bulbs, little by little over time. As they went on sale on Amazon, I would buy them, and then I would say, okay, I'm doing the laundry room now. Okay, the kitchen and the dining room are now all one thing. So one of the things I did was I'm kind of going on long about this, but the
That's
kitchen,
okay. I want to know.
We often want the kitchen and the dining room lights on at the same time, but they're on separate switches in the in the circuits. So I set up separate controls in the Echo, because the Echo can control smart home, and in the Apple Home, where I could have turn on dining room lights, turn on kitchen lights, or I could say turn on dining room and kitchen, or turn them off, and it will do the whole thing at once. Or the other thing I can do is as I'm leaving, I can say, hey, Shlomo, I'm leaving the house, and it will turn off all the lights automatically. I don't have to run around to every room turning off all the lights. Yeah. I also have
I like that.
I have an IFTTT rule, if this, then that, IFTTT.com, so that when I enter the geofence around my house, it turns on the light in my office, just so that there's a light on when I come in. That sort of thing. So.
I am so far behind in this.
I have a blog post brewing about all the ways that I use smart home tech in my house, and I'm not even that advanced on it, but some practical stuff. Anyway, I'm going on and on. I don't want to go on too long. So those are our picks of the week. We'll put the links to everything in our show notes. Before we sign off, we want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the secrets of technology. And today we're going to thank by name Christina T., Dennis G., Jeffrey F., Catherine M., and Kim L. Thank you very much. And through their generous support at sqpn.com/give, they make it possible for us to continue the secrets of technology and all the shows we do at SQPN. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So, folks, that's it from us. What do you think of our discussion here about making technology accessible for everyone, but also practical tips for how to help folks who need some help with technology, or that technology can help you take care of them? Let us know by visiting sqpn.com/technology or the SQPN Facebook page. Just search for StarQuest Media on Facebook. You can leave some feedback there on the show, or send us an email to technology@sqpn.com. You can find the links to that are relevant from our discussion, and especially our picks, on our show notes at sqpn.com. And remember to like each episode of The Secrets of Technology on our Facebook page, retweet it on Twitter, where we're at SQPN. Leave us comments so that we can have some feedback and discuss it in the show. And if you have not done so, please subscribe in iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app, or on YouTube, where you should also hit the bell to get notifications. And if you can, write a review in iTunes or one of the podcast directories. All this stuff helps us to reach more people, grow the audience, and, the bigger the audience gets, the more likely the show can continue, because this is a show about helping folks and being connected, and we want to have a big community that we're connecting with and helping with technology. So, until next time, Joanne Mercier, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of technology.
Thank you for having me, as always.
And Father Cory Sticha, thank you as well.
I'm glad to be here, and thank you, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Technology on StarQuest.